Thanks for checking out this video where I will be ranking all of the Vinegar Syndrome releases that I got for August. Real quick, my apologies, I might be taking some drinks of water during this just because my throat's dry today. You know, allergies are kicking in. It's one of those things. Anyway, gonna get into it. As usual, I will start with the film I liked the least from from all the releases that I got, and then end with the one that I liked the most. So I'm also going to try to not make this go too long with each of them and not talk about every single special feature, just kind of talk about the special features as a whole, just to make this move a little more. So, okay, getting into it. The release that I liked the least, and actually this is the release I've liked the least of the entire year by Vinegar Syndrome, that is Bloodbath at the House of Death. This is a horror comedy. The plus, it has, as you can see, maybe, Vincent Price in it. It needed a lot more Vincent Price. I just love Vincent Price's acting, such a presence on screen. So if there was a lot more of that in the film, I think it could have been a lot more fun. The comedy really doesn't land for me, although I think some people are going to enjoy this film. You know, every film finds its audience somewhere. So there will be some people who kind of like this. I didn't like the film at all. I found it very boring. I didn't find that the humor was really hitting all that well. But other than that, it's pretty well put together. Special features wise, though, there are some good special features on here. They do talk to some people involved with the film. And they also talk about kind of the comedic mastermind behind the movie. And I think that was some of the most interesting stuff about this release. They kind of talk about that individual's career and their importance within British comedic cinema and otherwise. And yeah, like that stuff is actually very interesting. So the special features are definitely better than the film, and that's kind of what I expect from Vinegar Syndrome, that if the film they're releasing isn't that great, their special features will make it a little better, and that is the case with this, although I was not a big fan of Bloodbath at the House of Death. So that's my number 7 of the releases that I have for August. So yeah. So my number 6 of the releases, unfortunately, is one of their 4Ks. It is Devil Times 5. Although I know there are people who really do like Devil Times 5, and that's cool. That's great. I think part of it is I have a hard time actually liking killer kid movies because the kids never seem all that menacing to me. And I think that's one of the things that goes on with this film is that the kids don't seem that menacing. It really seems like the adults that they're killing easily could be, could be taking them out. I mean, and that's basically all it's about. It's, these kids who are escaped from a mental facility who end up coming up upon these these adults who are kind of in this secluded cottage for a getaway, and then they kind of like endear themselves to them and are staying with them, and then they're just like, oh, you're such good kids, we need to help you get back home, and then the kids are like killing them. So yeah, because they're from a mental institution. But yes, there are some interesting scenes, there are some interesting kill scenes within the film, but for the most part it moves way too slowly. I think the acting is pretty bad, although with child actors, I think they did pretty good for what they needed to do. There are some good special features with this, though. They do have what's one of the better ones? They have Stephen Thrower, interview with Nightmare USA author Stephen Thrower, who's always a joy to hear talk about any film because of his wealth of knowledge. So that's a really great one. There are a decent amount of special features on this. So again, just like Bloodbath at the House of Death, it's one of those instances where the special features are more worth it than the movie itself, at least for me in this instance. Although, like I said, I do know some people who like Devil Times 5 quite a bit, and they do in the special features kind of talk about the hype around this film, kind of the cult following around this film, and actually they interview a few of the child actors from this, which is always very interesting to get that and kind of get their like childlike view with the production itself. That's the really cool stuff about this. Wasn't a big fan. It does look good. It is a 4K. It does look quite good. So that's a big plus. So anyway, my number 6, Devil Times 5. Now going to number 5, is one of the ones I had to purchase in addition. Those first two were included with subscriber um, films, and that is My Father is a Hero. This is a pretty solid one. It's a Jet Li film, also known as The Enforcer, and it's got some humor to it, not a ton. A lot of interesting, fun martial arts. The story isn't great, unfortunately. The story actually is very kind of slow and plodding. You're just, or at least I just found myself just waiting for the next action sequence to happen. But when the action sequence happens, it's great. The child actor in this guy did phenomenal. I could not believe how good he was as a child actor. Plus all the martial arts that he does. I feel like that alone is worth getting this to see. Also, if you're a Jet Li fan in general, because Jet Li's martial arts are always very entertaining. Um, and honestly, it was very interesting to hear in the special features how people talked about Jet Li. One of the people interviewed said that like they had worked with Jackie Chan as well. It was another actor from the film. And they said that Jackie Chan was more of like the person who after filming wanted to like go out and like have a party with a lot of people and just like live it up and was very like loud and boisterous. Whereas Jet Li was a much more reserved, quiet person on the set and in his personal life, and would more prefer getting together with like small groups of friends for just like quiet nights. Sounds like my type of person. I'm more a Jet Li than a Jackie Chan apparently, but you know, Jackie Chan probably was very fun at parties. But yeah, so this one actually it's you're in it for the martial arts, and there's a lot of very cool martial arts. There's a lot of cool set design that they intentionally created to do some of these moves around that I love. So when this film is shining, it's during the action sequences, but the story is just not good at all. It's so boring and slow, and the film's overly long for what it is, unfortunately. But like I said, the action sequences. So if you're really just wanting the action sequences, which are great, I would go ahead and check into this one. But it's pretty good. And special features wise, my favorite of the special features was the interview with the child actor, because he talked about like how he got into martial arts, working with Jet Li, like his experience like doing martial arts at a young age. Very fascinating, and just seems like a really cool person. So my number, what was this, 5? My number 5 pick, or ranked film is My Father is a Hero. Pretty solid. Now going to my number 4, and that is the other one that I bought in addition. This is a Shawscope film, and that is Love on Delivery. And I love this design. It's just wonderful. Plus, the Garfield mask actually is significant to the film itself. In addition to having great packaging, this is a pretty fun movie. This is a comedy. This is a martial arts action comedy that really hits in the most fun ways. There is actual dialogue that is funny. There are great fight sequences, like actual like good martial arts, and in addition like baking comedy into martial arts fight sequences, which is something that's kind of new to me. Well, not totally new to me, but Stephen Chow is involved with this film, so a lot of people understand. You would know him from like Kung Fu Hustle, stuff like that. And there is an essay in here, just one essay booklet, a booklet with one essay is what I should say, that is pretty decent in kind of talking about Stephen Chow and kind of a little bit of his career, but also kind of rehashes a lot of the movie, unfortunately. And that's the type of stuff I don't like in essays, is when they're just kind of rehashing, and this happened in the film, and this happened in the film. Okay, but like give me like some insight into that and like some context and stuff like that, because I already just watched the movie. I don't like want it to just be retold to me. But you know, still not a bad essay. So just to backpedal a little bit, the story behind this is it's literally a guy who's a delivery guy, which is why it's called Love on Delivery, that falls in love with this woman who's willing to kind of give him a chance a little bit, but he kind of screws it up. And then he wants to learn martial arts because he's kind of getting bullied by this one guy who is a martial arts instructor himself. So he goes to this dude who says that he'll teach him martial arts, and this guy teaches him like bogus martial arts. There's a lot of good comedy involved with that sequence. But somehow the guy and the delivery guy ends up actually being awesome at martial arts, and he puts on a mask, the Garfield mask, and actually like takes out bad guys and like takes out the bullies. And through that, the woman then falls in love with the guy behind the mask, even though she doesn't know who it is. And there's a lot of comedy that comes from who is the person behind the Garfield mask. Great sequences in this, especially like the really wild martial arts one, including there's one where there's like a whole crowd of people there to see two people fighting, and then all of a sudden the whole place erupts in a fight, and people are getting literally like with wires used thrown like all over the place like in rapid succession, and it's just one of the funniest weird things I've seen in one of these types of films. It's just fun. Like, this is a fun, relaxing, good film, and I'm surprised at how well the comedy actually does hit for a film like this. And special features are pretty good. The essay pretty solid. They interviewed some people involved with it, have interesting stories about on the set, and they talk about kind of the comedy of it and Stephen Chow and everything. And there is a special feature kind of talking about Stephen Chow's career. So this one I think is worth getting if you're into martial arts, if you're into comedy and comedy martial arts. But this is a pretty solid one. So my number 4 pick, Love on Delivery. Now going to my number 3 pick, and it's going to be Hell's Trap. This one looked very interesting to me before I got these. This was one of the included ones. This is a Mexican horror film that is terrible, but in a fun way terrible. Very, very fun. It's very 80s. There's a great mullet. One great mullet, Pedro Fernandez, who apparently is was very popular and a huge celebrity in Mexico at the time. He has this amazing mullet in this, but the acting is so awful. The story isn't that great, but there are some fun, like, stalking sequences. It's basically about a bunch of people who decide that they're going to go into the woods as, like, a challenge to try and kill a bear, because it's rumored that there's a bear killing people in this forest, but they're gonna go stay there because they're not afraid, and they're gonna just kill this bear. They take guns with them and everything, but it's actually this dude who wears this glove, this very Freddy Krueger like glove, and this mask, and pretty effective at killing people. There are some good trap scenes, some good kill scenes, some good explosions in the film. They have They talk about the pyrotechnics actually in one of the special features on here. It is light on special features, and the special features it has are kind of short, but it is good to get some insight from people. There's one of the actresses who's interviewed in this who particularly seems like a really nice, cool person. And her experience with this film was very, very positive. She had nothing but great things to say about everyone involved with it, which is great. Like, that's what you like to see. But it looks like one of those films that's just kind of like people had a good time making it, kind of knowing it's not like a great film, but it actually did okay in the theaters when it came out, interestingly enough. But I really enjoyed this as far as a so bad it's good film, because the acting hits exactly the way I want it to in films like that. It's just so bad, but it's so entertaining. And the dialogue, like, it's subtitled obviously because it's a Mexican film, but you literally could watch the movie and not even read the dialogue because the dialogue is so bad and pointless. So that's an option for people who really don't like subtitles. I'm just saying. You can do that with this film. But I really did like this release quite a bit, and that's why Hell's Trap is my number 3 ranked for August. Real quick, sorry, gonna pause. Get some more of that water. Okay, so coming down to the final 2. Both of these are the cinematograph releases. These were very good, and they share a common theme. My number 2 is going to be Joyride. This one is great, very good. It has one of the interesting things. Let me see. I can't remember all their names, but it stars Melanie Griffith, Anne Lockhart, Robert Carradine, and Desi Arnaz Jr. So all people who were young at the time, because it's from the 70s, who were children of kind of Hollywood royalty, and it kind of adds into the experience of the film. It's basically about 3 friends who decide that they're done with their dead-end jobs. You know, they're 20-something, they're disillusioned with America and the American dream, and they decide we're just going to go up to Alaska, We're going to get jobs up there. We're going to have a good time. And they don't really have a plan. And they don't go with a lot of money. So they get up there and things just start going wrong. And really what this film is about the relationships between these people, how ill prepared they are for what they think is going to be a freeing experience, and it's just a descent into criminality because as they keep going on, they realize what they're willing to do in order to stop eating dog food to live and stuff like that. So there are some scenes in this film that just do seem pretty sad, but it always feels a little more joyful than that, and a lot of the great aspect of this film has to do with how interesting the characters are and how interesting their relationships are and what they decide to do and how nonchalant they end up becoming with things because of their situation in life. This is a great release. The essays in the booklet they have in here are very good. They give a lot of extra context that they read into it. I will kind of read out what the titles of the essays are. Dirt Road, that's an interesting one. I mean, they're all really good. And that one's kind of talking about, the actors and actresses and how they fit into the making of the film. The Forgotten, the films of Joseph Rubin, the guy who directed the film, who is also interviewed in a special feature on the disc. He's kind of boring as an interview, but he did have some interesting things to say. And they talk about his career in that essay, which is very interesting because I didn't really know that much about him. And then Killing Yourself to Live. That's probably the best of that. Sorry, is probably the best of the essays in my opinion, because it becomes like the most analytical about what's going on in the film and kind of breaking down the characters a little bit more. But special features are really good. The essays are where it's really at, and the film is very, very good. It's kind of an underappreciated film for its time, and it's just it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a wild ride, like it's a semi-wild ride of a movie, no pun intended. But like I said, the characters are so interesting and where they end up and how they slowly kind of get there. And then just the deeper meaning and the context of society at the time. So this is a very good release. Again, Cinematograph doing a great job. So that's why my number 2 ranked for August is Joyride. So that leads me to my number 1, which is Thieves Like Us. This is wonderful. I love this film. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I saw the trailer, and I was like, okay, it's like a 1930s film, like just post-Depression. And it has Keith Carradine and Shelley Duvall, who are wonderful in this. All the acting is great. Keith Carradine and Shelley Duvall in particular are wonderful. And them together really, really shine. And it's really mainly about their two characters kind of coming together. It's about Keith Carradine and these two guys that he works with kind of knocking off banks. And you get the sense that he's kind of like, this is just what he does. He hasn't really put a lot of thought into it because he's so young, and that's kind of the only way he knows to make a living in post-depression. So it says a lot about kind of society at the time. And there's an essay in here I'll talk about in a little bit that's wonderful. But the characters are so interesting, how they interact with each other, how they interact with society, and just like being disillusioned with the country they live in at that point and the situation they're in. There's a lot of kind of like us versus them mentality as far as economic situation goes. And it's just a very insightful, interesting of its time period movie, that being when it's set, not when it was made in the 70s, but in the 30s when it's set. It's adapted from a book, and apparently they did a really good job kind of keeping it very faithful to the book. And actually there's a special feature on here, interview with what's her name, Joan Tewksbury, who wrote the script. She adapted it from the book, and that was a very interesting interview about kind of how she does script writing and how she did it for this film. That was really cool. Also, there's an interview with Keith Carradine that's great. He seems like he's a very engaging person to have interviewed, which doesn't surprise me because he's an actor, but he seems like a cool guy and a really nice guy, and he had great insight for this. So love those special features on here. And then the essays are just chef's kiss. The essays in this in particular, chef's kiss. Like as far as essays go, I think this is the best release this year. And I really look forward to the essays. The first one is Children of the Depression, which is a really great essay kind of talking about the context of the Depression with this film, which is very, very interesting and insightful from a historical standpoint, even. The next one is I Don't Want to Leave You, which is kind of getting more into the relationship that ends up burgeoning between Keith Carradine and Shelley Duvall's characters, who basically are just people who are living these lives that they don't really believe in, but they find each other and they want something else, but they're too ingrained in what's going on in their life around them that it kind of keeps them apart to a degree. Like they're together, but then they're apart, and it's this interesting thing you watch of like what they have versus what they really want, and kind of how that desire develops between them. It's pretty beautiful, and it's really well done. And then my favorite essay, and this is actually my favorite essay of any Vinegar Syndrome anything of the year, and that's Capitalism's Suffocating Grasp, which is an unbelievable essay about capitalism and how it basically is killing people in this time period. Really, how it's killing people in general, and the kind of delusion of the American dream, and how people kind of buy into how that's sold to people, how people buy into that, and how that keeps them in terrible life situations. The belief that they can kind of make it in this capitalist society when they really can't. You know, let's be honest, none of us really can make it that way in society. It's a very few amount of people who can obtain the American dream. And even when a lot of people do that, they end up being very miserable, to be honest. Look at a lot of millionaires and billionaires. They seem like pretty terrible people and pretty grumpy people. But I shout out Mayra E. Gates wrote that one, my favorite essay of the year. Very important, very great for context with the film. So this is one of the things where, again, like I was talking about earlier, like the special features, especially the essays, really enhance the experience of the movie. It was a very good movie in the first place that I really enjoyed watching and already want to watch again. But you throw the essays in on top of that and the insight from the interviews, and there's so much more to think about. There's so much more to look for in a second viewing with this film. And I love it. Like, it's great. I didn't expect to love this movie the way I do, but it's wonderful. And I would highly, highly recommend it. And obviously, that's why Thieves Like Us is my number one ranked for the August Vinegar Syndrome releases. And it's in my top 10 for the year at this point. But we'll see where all that pans out at the very end. Anyway, would love to hear your thoughts on any of these if you've seen them, or whatever you want to talk about as far as Vinegar Syndrome or horror or whatever. Whatever you're excited about, go ahead and put it in the comments. Do me a favor, please hit subscribe to my channel. I do appreciate that a lot. Do a thumbs up on these videos. Helps with the YouTube algorithm. And you can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. Regardless, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate that. And until next time, keep it brutal.